Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's PMI Friday webinar, the first of 2021 and the 35th in our schedule so far. Today's webinar, Choosing the Right Improvement Approach with Des Kelly, and my name is Rich Seddon. For those of you who don't know me, I'll be facilitating the session today, which includes running the Q&A desk, which we'll be using throughout the presentation. There are two aspects to that, both the question facility and the chat facility. We'd love it if you could use both. You can find them in your Zoom control panel. Please do keep your questions, comments, observations coming, and we'll put them to Des, and I'll put them to Des as we go through. As usual, today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll send all registered participants a link via email next week to the recording of both the audio and the presentation. And we're broadcasting live on Facebook and LinkedIn. So to those joining us on the live streams, welcome. Great to have you with us. Also great to have so many familiar names with us, friends and clients of the company. So great to have you all with us. If this is your first PMI webinar, where have you been? You will find the full schedule on the website. Again, the address is in the chat box, pmi.co.uk/webinars. Finally, before we get underway, we send all registered participants a short voice of the customer survey once we've finished. We'd be really grateful for your feedback as well as suggestions for future topics for the PMI Friday webinars. One question that has come up is, are we continuing these? Yes, we absolutely are. We've got a schedule through to the end of April at the moment in scope. Published is the one up to the end of January, so still an opportunity to influence those. So if there are topics, subjects you'd like us to cover that we haven't already, or if there's ones that you'd like to see again with a different perspective, just let us know in that survey. Really keen to hear from you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Des.
Thanks very much, Rich. First of all, can I just say what a joy it is to see so many people joining us again, either live as we are this afternoon or as we play back. It's really quite humbling to see that so many of you will take the time out to come and join us on our webinars. And as Rich said, if you've got any questions or any suggestions, then boy, are we glad to hear of them. So welcome. This is a webinar about choosing the right improvement approach, choosing the right improvement approach. So that's going to be quite a challenge in itself. So what are we going to be covering today? So what we will be looking at is some of the improvement approaches, some of the methodologies that are about there that you could possibly use. I want to put some context in that. So I'm going to actually look at some history and the gurus. So where did some of these ideas come from in the first place? We'll look at what the approaches have in common, and we'll also have a look at where there may be difference in the approaches. We'll be looking at what you need to do to establish a system for improvement, and whilst realizing the end game, which is that the business experiences sustained success in achieving its aims. There is no purpose for an improvement, a program, approach, methodology, if it doesn't help the business improve in a sustainable manner. So that's what we're looking at. A little bit of context for the conversation today. We have for the last 12 months nearly 12 months been going through what is one of the most turbulent and strange times I think humanity has probably understood or seen or felt. And it's in no doubt the organizations that we are working with and for will have to change, and with that change make improvements. So the challenge for many of us is going to be, what is the best method to choose in our circumstance? And then is there really a choice? So this session today is about you making a choice. So what does this mean for you and for your organization? I'm going to start, because as we like to on these sessions, is to get your views. It helps me direct the conversation. So I'm going to put a poll in place. And the poll is this. Where are you at this moment in time in the selection of your improvement methodology? And you've got 4 answers. We are looking at the best methods we are looking at what the best methods may be for our situation. We're looking at using methodologies that we know are correct and working. We are using methodologies that are not as effective as we would like them to be. And we are looking to expand and have different approaches for different needs. Rich, have we got a poll going there?
We certainly have. Checking everyone, including myself, is awake here. I had my finger poised over the button, but I hadn't pressed it. So it should be on screen for you guys now. And I can see you are responding. So clearly my click has worked. So again, Des said we've got 4 questions there. If there is, if you are in a position that doesn't fit any of those categories, do drop it in the chat afterwards as well. We'd like to hear from you on there. So help Des shape his conversation today. Make sure we're responding live as we can. So it looks like this, by the speed of responses, we're getting some thought into this one. So just give you a few more moments on that. The 4 options. Okay, so 10 more seconds before we close that, and then I'll show you the results and we can see what we've got. And Des, just to, I'm not sure if it'll appear on your screen the same as it is on mine, but we'll just mind the percentages on the bottom in case we misinterpret them. There's no graph on the bottom element for me. That might just be me, but just
no, I don't seem to have one either.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, so can I if I expand my screen. Here we go. Right. It's a new year, new days. Okay, thank you very much, folks. I'll close that and share the results with you. So what we've got, Des, very big, in fact, overwhelmingly, is response number 4. We're looking to expand and have different approaches for different needs. Okay, that's interesting. So you and I were discussing this poll when you wrote this presentation, Des. Is that what you thought would be the case with this one?
I don't think I had a preconceived idea, but I'm actually quite pleased that that's what it is. I think that's quite uplifting. It's good to see that the more negative one in there, which is answer 3, is that we are using methodology not as effective. There's only 7% of the population feeling that. So 42% looking to expand and have different approaches. I think that's very wise. Very wise.
Well, no pressure, Des, but your task today is to satisfy 42% of your audience on that one and delight the rest of them.
Very good. I was wondering where that was going to lead to. Right, so in which case then, let's have a look at some of the approaches then in that case, some of the approaches. Well, if you joined me 2 or 3 weeks, well, a little bit before Christmas or before the end of last year, we had a conversation about some of these. Some of the different approaches are things like Six Sigma, Kaizen or Gemba Kaizen, as you may know it, Design for Six Sigma, TPM, Total Productive Maintenance, TQM, Total Quality Management, Lean, and we said then many more. So as not to be a little bit boring, I've actually pulled up some of what the more are. And here are some of the more. And I'll go through them again in a little bit more detail. But we've got 8D, or TOPS, that's team-orientated problem solving, quality circles, possibly Hoshin Cannery, business process re-engineering. We have Agile and Scrum, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Then the subject of process excellence, or operational excellence, depending on which side of the coin you wish to drop for, and then quality function deployment. So that's the last of them. So there's some of the tools, and I would be really interested if you believe there is another tool out there that I've not pulled on, and there are some that I've deliberately left off the screen because they don't necessarily fit the improvement approach, but and others are embedded in some of the bigger subjects. So if you feel as though you have something that you would like to ask about, drop it in the chat and we'll have a look. Going to make another poll right now, and what we're actually looking here is, okay, as organizations, what improvement are you trying to make? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And I've given some answers in here. So answer 1 is to change our culture. 2 is to be accredited to a recognized ISO 9000 standard, be that for quality, be it for environment, health and safety, whatever it's going to be. To improve quality, to eliminate defects that upset our customers, maybe to improve customer service, to improve productivity, to cut costs, or to establish who's at fault so we can make sure that it is corrected. Now then, tick any of those or all of them if they apply. And if there's something there that I've not listed, please add it to the chat.
Okay.
Rich, how about that?
Should be on screen now.
Quite a complicated poll, that one, but it gives us a greater ability to understand where we're going. Oh, wow. That made a big jump.
Boom, have it.
Boom.
Okay, so there's responses coming in for you, those of you on the live streams that can't see this. I won't narrate the live percentages. We've been told it's distracting and possibly influencing votes. So in this climate, political or otherwise, we do not want to be accused of that. So just give you a few moments, another 20 seconds on that as you respond. I can see there is a lot to think about in those. And as Des, just to remind on Des's point, do add any additional comments to the chat, and we'll feature that when we can. Okay, so another 10 seconds before we close that out. Get your answers in if you would. Okay, and we've got our first in the chat as well already. Okay, they're coming in thick and fast onto the chat, great. Okay, so I'll end polling at that point. Now, best of luck live interpreting all of these results, Des, but what I say is you wrote the questions, so over to you to share the results. So, yeah, okay. Improved quality at 79% there, but you know, a complex list. So what are your thoughts here, Des? What does this tell you about your audience?
I think it's a couple of things I'm quite pleased about, to be honest with you. First of all, to establish who's at fault, which was, as you probably gathered, because you're all a very wise group of individuals if you're listening to these webinars and you've been on them before, that was probably today's trick question. Because for all of us in our improvement world, we know that it's not the people who are at fault, it will be the process that is at fault. And the whole purpose about improvement is to establish how those processes can be better serve the people who are working in them. So I did notice there were two of you that clicked that box, but I'm going to put that down to an error. Improve quality, yes. What do we mean by quality? But to change our culture, that's an interesting one. That's the engagement, the involvement of people. I'm very interesting on that one. Not so many to be accredited to a standard. So I think that's quite good, Rich. I was quite pleased about that because it's not badge collecting we're going for here. It is actually real improvement. And I think the predominance here, the things, improve quality, improve productivity, they're the ones that carry the big banner to improve customer service. I think they are really good. And I don't know whether we saw, is there it in the chat about
yep, couple of items came in. One about improving your NPS, Net Promoter Scores. Interesting take, fantastic. And I think we put that probably somewhere around customer service, customer journey. And also one from Rich, which not me, and that's accelerated implementation methodology, AIM.
Right, okay. Accelerated. So that is, I'm assuming that it's not a technique I'm absolutely up to detail with, but my assumption is if it says what it does on the box, that's about implementing your learning and your improvements faster than you would otherwise do. And I'll have a little look about some of the other processes or methodologies that may involve that. Fantastic. That's really great, everybody. I really appreciate that response.
Yeah, so, thanks, folks.
Okay, so some history then. Before we go on, I'm just going to actually go through a little bit of history here. And if you were with me 3 weeks ago, I'm taking a slightly different approach to this. What I'm actually going to look at is actually look at some of the gurus and some of the people who have had a big impact, not only on the methodologies that we choose to use, but also on the philosophies behind those methodologies. And if you start and you look at these, we have obviously probably the earliest one we would look at is Walter Schuhart, who had a very significant influence on two people, W. Edwards Deming particularly. Edwards Deming, we're a Deming organization, so we obviously follow his philosophies quite closely, but he brought around things like the thinking about system of profound knowledge and modified Schuhart's Plan, Do, Check, Act to Plan, Do, Study, Act to make it easier to understand for us in the West. The emphasis on statistical process control and specifically the need to understand variation. And that understanding variation was really key with Deming. And along with his management principles, he influenced many people across the world for many, many years. contemporary of Deming's was Joseph M. Duran. The two of them don't appear to have ever worked together, but share a lot of the philosophies in terms of the engagement of people, how you work with people. Duran tended to focus more, if you like, on the industrial side of it. He generated in 1986 this thing called the Quality Trilogy, which we're going to touch on. He also was very concerned about variation, which is an interesting thing. He had a slightly different phraseology behind it, though. He referred to assignable cause as sporadic and common cause as chronic. And there's a slight nuance in there, which I won't go into now, but that's one of the things he did. He was very big on leadership, how leaders need to take ownership and lead quality, and influencing that thought that quality was in the hands of management and not always in the hands of the worker. Management create the environment where workers give quality. He was also, and I wasn't really aware of this until I started to research this, he is accredited with reviving Pareto. So the Pareto analysis, obviously the 80-20 rule, which many of us will know, is one of the 7 quality tools that latterly Ishikawa started to bring about. One of the nuances that Duran brought around, though, was the 80-20 rule is often known as the vital few, trivial many. He encouraged in his teaching that it's the vital few and the important many, on the basis that many of the things that weren't in the 80% were nonetheless important. You might be familiar with Shigo Shingo and his work. He's often accredited of working with Toyota. He didn't. He wrote an awful lot about the Toyota production system, but he's responsible for things like the single minute exchange of die, Poka-yoke system, zero quality control. And there is actually an organization and an improvement methodology, which is about the Shingo method. And it is very significantly about involving people. It is about being management led. So again, a lot of similarities in the philosophies. We have Dr. Genichi Taguchi. He was a big follower of Deming and Schuhart and followed on those things. And he brought around things like the Taguchi method, loss functional. Taguchi method, might have also heard it as orthogonal arrays, but a very, very influential person in terms of particularly the theory of quality he worked on. Then we have Ishikawa, and he was responsible for, many of you will know the Ishikawa diagram. He was also responsible for the 7 quality tools, which played a big part in the TQM environment back in the 80s and 90s, and was a big exponent of quality circles. Taiichi Ono, many of you will have heard of, considered the father of the Toyota production system and therefore the 7 wastes. We have Armand Feigenbaum, total quality control. The first that I remember reading of Armand Feigenbaum was his studies into those responsible for management of defects, and he was very clear about is that when you actually saw defects either in a service industry or in a manufacturing industry, when you looked at them, 97%, over 97%, he said, were the responsibility of management. So again, he emphasized the role of management in improvement. At the top, we've got Dr. Yoji Ako, who was responsible for quality function deployment, and Hoshin Cannery. All great methodologies that are used frequently. Phil Crosby for quality is free and zero defect concept. Again, more of a philosophy than a tools person, but there we go. The one at the bottom, Masaki Imai, he's responsible for what we refer to bringing to popularity Gemba Kaizen or Kaizen, and particularly 3 M's, the Muda Murai concept, which is actually quite new. 5S, or some people might have it as 5 C's, same thing. And then finally we've got Don Wheeler, who thankfully and for many years has been a friend of PMI and a close working ally with us. Worked for 21 years with Don Wheeler, and it was great when I was researching this program and this seminar to see how well Don is now perceived across the world in terms of his influence. His book Understanding Variation is a must read for anybody. He's focused on process performance, measurement, system analysis. He is the guiding light for the International Automotive Task Force. So for those of you that work in industry and you work in APQP, all the statistical guidance comes from Don in that, and he's a Deming medal winner from the American Society of Quality. All of those people have influenced very significantly the philosophies that are applied and the tools that are applied. And so what we want to do is to have a look and just dig into some of these tools and applications and see how well they dig in. Right, so Deming's system of profound knowledge. Let's deal with Deming first. I'm going to go through this quickly because we've done this on many occasions. Deming's system of profound knowledge encouraged leaders to understand the optimizing the whole system, systems thinking. This is about, first of all, before you make any changes, understand what changes you're making within the system. Understanding how to react to variation. And that's something I'm going to touch on in a little bit more detail. But that was key. One of the things he felt is that leaders could not make the right decisions if they didn't understand variation and its implications. He also encouraged the use of theories to learn, the theory of knowledge. And this is the encouragement of Plan, Do, Study, Act. Back to Schuhart, Plan, Do, Check Act, the learning, the science learning model. And he encouraged that. That was a very important thing. So a lot of Deming's work is about that. And again, the one thing that Deming was absolutely clear about was no improvement can be made without the involvement of people. And he was really, really focused upon the involvement and development of intrinsic motivation as opposed to extrinsic motivation. He was absolutely an advocate of the fact that all people, being humans, are intrinsically motivated, and what gets in the way of that intrinsic motivation is frequently management, philosophy, and thinking. And so therefore, influencing management thinking was going to be the key thing. So let's have a look at Duan then, because he was one of the other gurus that we touched on. I just want to touch on this. This was 1986. He made this model clear, and this was his theory of quality, which is that quality has a trilogy: quality planning, quality control, and quality improvement. And he looked like this. He said, well, in all products or services, the quality planning phase involves the quality of design, the quality of the process that we're using, the quality of facilities that we may have whilst we're doing that, the quality of training of people to operate and work in those processes, and then the quality of the suppliers who will be giving us goods and services that will help those processes operate. The basic premise is that after the quality planning phase, we will have an initial launch quality, and the product or service goes at an initial level. And if we then standardize that and we improve it, we should get to this situation where we get an improved level of quality. And this is a two-phased improvement, but clearly we'd want it to keep going on and on. What I want you to do as I'm talking through this is just actually try and reflect and see where are the similarities in the approach you're seeing. So Duan was very clear about that the lessons learned from that needs to be fed back to the quality planning phase so that for the next iteration of products, we could continually learn. Now, I wanted to actually just draw your attention to one thing that comes up, which is types of variation, and Deming and Duan. Both of them were absolutely clear about the fact that variation is probably one of the most significant impediments to businesses in whatever sector you're in. Now, Deming, he referred to, he brought to common language this understanding of common cause variation, which is always present, and it's normally due to the design of the inputs, the design of the process, the inputs and the operation of the process. And if it's common cause variation, it's almost impossible to assign any particular cause to that data point. I just wanted to remind you of that. He also brought around assignable cause variation, or the phrase assignable cause variation, where this was a specific change that would occur to the inputs or the operation of the process, and it could be fleeting, or it could be short term, or it could be lasting. You may have also seen that assignable cause sometimes was referred to as special cause. In Duan, however, and there will be a reason for me pointing this out to you, is that Duan was very, very clear. Now, this was 1996. Duan referred to common cause as chronic variation and assignable cause as sporadic. Okay, now I'm just going to bring back the methodologies one, and this is just to alert you to something. And if I bring back the methodology slide now that I've got, I'm just going to go through some of them. Right, the ones on the left-hand side you're familiar with, the ones on the right you may have a little less understanding of. So 8D or TOPS. TOPS is team-orientated problem solving. Now, for a long time, I've researched to actually try and understand where this came from. The urban legend was it came from Ford, and I have to say the predominant amount of research suggests that it did come from Ford, and it tends to be used across many organizations now. 8D, 8 disciplines. I'm going to look at what that is in a moment. But one of the things that if you research, you will see is that the person that's actually accredited or accredited with doing it, it might be self-accreditation on their own part of it, is a lady by the name of Eileen J. Beechell. And she won a quality award in Ford in 1986. 1986. Okay, and this is when Duan was most at his probably at his height in America. And she is claimed or has claimed and is accredited with having developed the initial 8D and its training. And she had developed it from and developed it because a problem-solving technique, which is Kepner-Trago, was seen as being not working for the organization. And she created this specifically for a provisional fix for chronic problems. For chronic problems. She's created 8D for provisional fix for common cause variation problems. That's how it should be read. So that's one of the elements in there. Then quality circles, it's clearly a process of improvement for employees. And quality circles, it was brought around by Taguchi. It works on the 7 quality planning tools, sorry, the 7 quality tools, and PDSA as a basis. Hoshin Cannery is about developing and deploying strategies. Business process re-engineering was about step change in business processes. You notice there's not an icon for it. It fell into disrepute, quite rightly in my view, because one of its key philosophies was, why bother with all these small improvements? Go big, go big. And the problem with going big was it didn't engage people. The organizations were being changed by people who were doing BPR. Big B, and it was an ego-driven thing, I'm afraid, from my point of view. Frequently changes made to organizations, made to people in organizations without their involvement. Most of them failed, hardly surprising. We then have Agile and Scrum, which is a methodology for managing projects. It's not really an improvement methodology, but it can be used to manage the outcome of an improvement methodology, particularly if those things have to be delivered incrementally. Agile and Scrum are particularly really valuable tools if you're doing software design. Very, very useful indeed. The process excellence one, improve and manage processes, is in fact a combination of the TQM tools, the Lean tools, and the Six Sigma tools just used together. It's almost like just a rebranding of Lean and Six Sigma and TQM. It's just like a rebranding. But nonetheless, the philosophy behind it is one that it has to be management led. And then quality function deployment, as I've said before, was embedded in DFSS. Let's have a look at total quality management then as a first methodology. And the first thing about total quality management was that it's top management's direct involvement in the delivery of quality where involvement cannot be delegated. It's strong customer orientation, where quality is customer driven. It should be a customer-wide participation in the events and delivery of quality goods and services. And it is a systematic method for using and solving problems. They use a systematic method for solving problems. So the essence of it was it's customer focused. It had to have leadership. And that might have been one of the areas where it failed. It was a process approach. It had the involvement of people central to it. It focused on decisions with data or encouraged the decision with data and was about continual improvement. It also was a system approach to management. And one of the things that it was very good about TQM was this emphasis on a mutual beneficial relationship with our suppliers. And all of these theories were generated from many of the philosophies that came from Deming, that came from Duan, that came from the people who were working in the environments at those times. If you look at some of the key tools, you'll see in the middle, the idea is small continual improvements. So making improvements, pushing up the hill and making sure it stands out. So you see how it works, and you see things like flow charts, affinity diagram, cause and effect, Pareto, scatter diagrams, matrix diagrams. Those are the type of tools. Quite simple tools and quite interesting. The one thing that struck me when I was really researching this was there wasn't a strict methodology behind TQM. It was a philosophy and a series of concepts, but no strict methodology about how you go about it. And that might be something to take on board.
Des, just before you progress on to Six Sigma, just a quick question on TQM came onto the desk.
Yeah.
Do you see the term TQM being used anymore in Europe? And if not, what's your theories on why not?
I don't see TQM used in Europe so much, but for any of us that have traveled anywhere, if you go to Asia, it is absolutely used. In Japan, for example, that you will never hear Six Sigma, you will never hear Lean, you will always hear TQM, Total Quality Management. And that's because they truly understood the philosophy behind it, and they generated the methodologies for themselves. So they took it on board as being an issue. You'd see it less in America, Europe, and the UK today, largely, I have to say, because of it was the buzz thing in the 1980s, early 1990s, and frankly, its ability or the results on organizations were not that strong. And then there were competing theories that were emerging. One of the biggest problems, I think, with TQM I'll take the UK because I was present in the UK at the time, was actually it was taught very badly, and it was almost something that leaders didn't have to do, but the organization did. And I think that was the bit that was emphasized. I think it was frankly tutored quite badly in Europe and in the West, whereas
Sorry, Des. And one of your colleagues has suggested that a great topic for a webinar would be a joint session with you and Professor Noriaki Kano to debate your assertion of the lack of methodology behind TQM. I think that would be highly entertaining and interesting.
It would. The thing was, as it was tutored, there was a lack of methodology. If you go to Japan, that's exactly the point I made. They did create the methodology. And I think that might well be the difference, is that there was no methodology taught. So I think the person who made that, I think that's absolutely correct. That's an interesting observation, is that a methodology behind it is going to be important. So a very interesting point.
Cheers, Des.
Yeah, okay. So Six Sigma then. Six Sigma brings around a genuine focus on a customer. It's data and fact-driven management. It's process-focused. It's management focused on improvement. There is proactive leadership, hopefully boundaryless collaboration, and a drive for perfection. Now, they're not my words. They're the words that came from Pand, Newman, and Kavner in their book, the Six Sigma Way Field book. But if we actually look at it, there is, in Six Sigma principles, it's top management's direct involvement in defining and leading the improvement system. So in both cases, both TQM and Six Sigma, they require absolutely top management's involvement, not blessing, not sanction, but involvement for them to work. And Six Sigma, slightly different in terms of TQM, where it's a project-driven focus. It's a project-driven methodology focused really on problem elimination. It's also predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly based on step change. It's about moving the outcomes of a process from one level to another at a step rate. And it offers systematic methods used for solving and resolving quite intricate problems. It has customer focus, so did TQM. It has leadership, so did TQM. It has a process approach, so does TQM. It has a project approach, which might be slightly different for those that were taught in the West anyway. It works on decisions with data, so was TQM. It deals with step change improvement as opposed to continual improvement, but not necessarily exclusively. Six Sigma can be used for small scale improvements. And if you understand how Six Sigma works, you'll use it not only for projects, but also in day-to-day management. Six Sigma as a methodology tends to be problem driven. It tends to be focused on trying to correct something that is either causing an issue or causing some pain in the business somewhere. And if you look at the tools that are available for Six Sigma, it becomes quite a profound list of tools. Central to that, though, is there is a process for the delivery of the actual improvement itself. And that, I think, is probably one of the things that was not so well defined in TQM. It's not absolutely true. Many organizations created their own infrastructure to do it, but Six Sigma has an explicit one. You may be familiar with DMAIC or the PMI improvement cycle around the outside of it. So Six Sigma, quite a robust thing. Now, lean principles. Now, lean principles, this is where the first thing is the philosophy has to be top management based decisions on a long-term philosophy about really about perfection, about creating perfection, even at the expense of short-term financial goals. There is the need for continual organizational learning. Every day we can learn something more, we can learn something new. And the key predominant there is look, go see for yourself, go to Gemba and see what you and learn from actually going to the place where the work is. Encouraging by making decisions slowly and by consensus. But when you've made a decision, slowly by consensus, implementing the outcome rapidly. It really has a very strong sense of grow leaders who will live the philosophy. There's an essence and an imperative where we respect, develop and challenge the people and teams in the organization. And then very strongly respect and challenge and help your suppliers. Well, there were lots of common things in there that were in both TQM and in Lean. But Lean has these things where you define value, you establish the value streams, you create flow, you establish pull, you encourage continuous improvement, and you seek perfection, seeking perfection. Lean also then says you have mutually beneficial supply relationships. I am not going to step out of my way to point out the similarities. Hopefully you've heard what the similarities are with lots of tools. The philosophies are broadly the same, or at least in the same direction, and many of the concepts and tools and techniques and thinking that go behind them are very similar as well. Some of the key tools behind Lean may be things like the PMI Model. I think I've heard that voice today already. SIPOC, flowchart, value stream maps, the concept of Mudo Murai. Where did we hear that? That came from Gemba Kaizen. Tact time, for example. Standardization, 5S, flow charting, and obviously based, around eliminating waste of all types if at all possible. And that comes from the 8 wastes, and we've got those. One of the other techniques we talked about was Gemba Kaizen. The Gemba Kaizen is another model. That's the icon there is Masaka Imai. The Gemba Kaizen book is, if any of you haven't read it, I do recommend you get hold of it and read it. It's a very, very sage book, and he encourages the use of many of the tools that we talked about that are used in Lean and are used in Six Sigma. And in fact, he talks about Lean and Six Sigma frequently when he's looking at things. I just wanted to draw your attention to one area of his book. I've actually copied something from his book because this might be quite relevant to you. Is that he's got this model of continual improvements, and you can see that in the center of the screen, whereby there's some degree of variation, and through standardization, he's got SDCA, he refers to that as standardization, do, check, act. We can get a process there where we can now maintain it, and from that we can plan the next steps, the next point of improvement. When we make the next improvement, we standardize, do, check, act, which gives us the opportunity to learn again and go for the next level of improvement. And I think that's really quite a nice little graphic he has there. Definitely a worthwhile book for reading. One of the pages you'll see in there, and I just wanted to point this out to you because this is something I absolutely, totally agree. You can only agree to 100%. You can't go greater than that. But I've shaded out the bits I didn't want you to read, and I've left the bits clear that you can see. And this is what Imai has said, and I think this is so, so true. And all improvement people should recognize this, in my view, and all methodologies will fall over if you don't understand this. And it is this: where there is no standard, there can be no improvement. For these reasons, standards are the basis for both maintenance and improvement. Now, that is something I would hope everyone on this webinar either knew already or will take on board and really believe. I have heard people in conferences say that standardization impedes innovation. There can be nothing further from the truth. The reality of it is standardization, and PMI is a great proponent of this, is the bedrock for all improvement. And if I take a little model and show you this, we actually have a process of performance where we have natural entropy. If you launch a process into an environment and you don't look after it, after time, it will just decay and it will not be of any use. The way we avoid that, and as PMI says, is through standardizing it. You standardize the process so that you identify the one best way, and through standardizing it, you can then maintain. And if you can maintain the process, you will learn. And if you can learn, you can then make continual improvements. So Gemba Kaizen is really this methodology of standardize, maintain, improve, using many of the tools that we talk about in Lean and Six Sigma and TQM. The tools are really, really very important, but Gemba Kaizen, continuous improvement, and that allows us to go on for many, many times. Just going to draw a comparison between Gemba Kaizen, possibly and Six Sigma. Gemba Kaizen is predominantly, but not entirely. All these things you could get quite big improvements through Gemba Kaizens. Let's be absolutely clear about it. But the actual methodology itself is there for small incremental. Every single day, doing something new, 0.5% improvement, 1% improvement every single day, continuing to do that, learning as you're going. It's a very important thing. It may well be that the process you're operating with, the outcomes that come from that process are just so totally unacceptable. Waiting for small step improvements is not going to do. This is where the Six Sigma projects come in. They create the step change. So Six Sigma projects are about the step change. But however, and this is something that PMI really did stress, is that when I've now done my Six Sigma project, I sit down and I'll wait for 3 weeks, 4 weeks to do something else. No, you should be doing the next thing immediately. We should be standardizing, maintaining, and improving. And that was a key drive that we actually had. So that's a combination of Gemba Kaizen, continuous improvement, and Six Sigma step change improvement. Let's have a look at total productive maintenance. I'm going to do this very, very quickly because we're running out of time in some respects. But if we look at overall TPM, so this subject was total preventative maintenance. So if we actually look at it, over total productive maintenance, let me go back to that one slide. There is that this is the house of TPM, and if you notice, the foundation is 5S, and there's some pillars. The measurement of it is OEE. And so some people talk about OEE as being an improvement methodology. OEE is not an improvement methodology. OEE is a method of measuring the effectiveness of how well TPM has been done. So OEE was a method created by CHE Nakajima to evaluate effectively the 8 pillars of TPM and how they had influenced and benefited the organization. So OEE sits across the top of the pillars as a measure of the 5S foundation and focused improvement, autonomous maintenance, planned maintenance, training and education, early equipment failure, quality of maintenance, office TPM, safety, health and environment, those sort of things. They were all things. Continuous improvement in OEE is the goal of TPM, so making small improvements everywhere. And OEE is a measure of how well the assets work compared to its full. So TPM is a useful methodology. And I'll go through this very quickly. The key elements of TPM are 5S, focused improvement, autonomous maintenance, planned maintenance, training and education. Training and education, really important. If you go into Gemba Kaizen, training, really very important. Early equipment management, quality maintenance, office TPM, health and safety. So the TPM measurement process, as I say, is OEE. So TPM has a slightly different approach. Just want to draw back now on Duan's quality trilogy. So if we actually looked at Duan's quality trilogy, 1986, remember, he actually said that effectively anything that was below that jagged line was chronic waste. And the tools and his approach to life were, generally speaking, to how do I get rid of that chronic waste? Either remove the variation, to either remove the waste, to create small improvements all of the time, or to get greater facilities. So you see how TPM, Gemba Kaizen, Lean, and Six Sigma are all tools and techniques there to drive out chronic waste from any industry, from any service, from any process. Just a quick look on the actual process then for this 8D or TOPS. And I've red ringed that because I want to draw attention to that, is that 8D was, if the author is correct in the assertion that it was created for the provision to fix, for a provisional fix for chronic problems, which in the day was referenced, or would be known today, as common cause variation. So we actually have a look at this in terms of, let's have a look at problem solving and process improvement, because problem solving is a methodology as well as Six Sigma and Lean, right? And so we have process improvement. There's a slight difference in them. One is creating, one is repairing, but the tools and techniques in both cases are almost exactly the same. But one is about creating new and the other is about reinstating or repairing. And so that's what we're looking at. Now, if we're looking about the scope of problems, there is, if you like, where you got the 8D is used, and let me draw on this parallel now, is that if you've got, if you know it's an assignable cause variation, you should be able to go and observe and find out what was causing that assignable cause. If you can find out what it is, just correct it. And that's in the bottom left-hand corner. Just correct it. You don't need 8D if you can go out and see it. So if you've got a sporadic influence, it's popped outside of the control limits, it's something's a real big surprise, you should be able to go and do it. 8D problem solving is there for when it's a little bit more interesting. Maybe it is just as common cause that's causing you a large problem, and you probably need 8D for that. There are some other issues in there in terms of signals which might be run of 8s or whatever above or below the mean that could also fit into the 8D. If it's not an 8D problem, it should be a chartered improvement project, and it's probably therefore going to be a greenbelt project that you're going to be looking at. Right, so I'm going to bounce over that one. So this was the thing about remembering the types of variation when we're doing problem solving. And this is some other learning I've had, and which is quite interesting from Beechel's work, is that if you don't understand the difference between common cause variation and assignable cause variation, then maybe problem solving isn't right for you. And even though problem solving is probably one of the most common sources of improvement methodologies. So if, for those of you that are not familiar with what common cause or assignable cause variation is, do go look, because if you're treating assignable cause as though it were common or common as though it's assignable, it probably means your problem solving isn't going to be very good. For this reason, treating common cause variation as if it's due to an assignable cause is tampering and actually makes things worse, and forgetting or not treating common cause variation, assuming it's a signal due to common cause variation, is just having losing an opportunity to learn. Rich.
Des, on that subject, just thought I'd really quickly take the opportunity on Des's point about common cause variation. Do take a look at the webinar, Damien's webinar from December, which is on that very subject. You'll find a full description of that in there.
Oh, great. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Rich. So actually, let's have a look at 8D then. So this is an 8D problem solving. So you see for the team, describe the problem. This is what is it not. You're flow charting the problem. You're doing good description. You would contain the problem. That's exactly what PMI says you should do in Gemba Kaizen as well. You identify root cause using some of the Taguchi principles, looking at cause and effect, maybe 5 whys. And it's an interesting one. If you don't understand whether it's common cause or assignable cause, you might select the wrong 5 whys tool. And if you want to know more about that, there are actually 2 5 whys tools. One is recursive, one is linear. Recursive works for if it's assignable cause, and if it's common cause, and if it's assignable cause, you can use the 5 whys. So that's an interesting one. Identifying corrective actions, verifying root causes, standardizing, PDSA. Again, you see those commonly used in all of the other methodologies. And then assessing the risk of problem reoccurrence anywhere goes back to a TQM process of containment and risk assessment. And then finally celebrating with the teams. So the 8 disciplines are there on your screen itself. Coming to the last couple of slides, well, no, not the last couple of slides, but the last couple of theories. Hoshin Cannery, what is Hoshin Cannery? That's another methodology we've got. So Hoshin Cannery is largely about setting direction. It's largely to do with strategy and to do with making sure the organization is aligned behind you. And so if you look at the 2 graphics there, the process benefits of Hoshin Cannery are, it's a leadership process. It allows the leadership to define what's critical to the organization and allows them to determine what are the key goals and what are the strategic objectives that the business needs to fit, and align the organization in responding to those strategic objectives. It's about aligning the organization. And the one thing about Hoshin Cannery, it does have a process to go through. Not the easiest of ones to do, but it's a very interesting methodology to have. And we could spend a lot more time going over it and looking at it. So Hoshin Cannery, there are probably other tools and techniques I could look for, but let's have a look for organizing for improvement. If you joined me on our previous webinars, you will have seen this, where I say that, you know, for any organization to improve, the leadership have to understand they have basically 3 roles. First of all is to lead the system, understand the business as a system, define it well, and lead that system and make sure that it's targeted at delivering what the customers need. When that system is not working the way you want it to do, or the organization outside changes, then we need to sponsor projects to actually bring around change. But we also need to manage the process, and that's where the Gemba Kaizen concept of standardize, maintain, improve fits in. So you can see there that we have system thinking, we have projects to improve, and we have Gemba Kaizen. So the question now is, so which method will you choose? And at this point, I'm going to slow down a little bit and just sort of say, this is actually quite important, because this is what you're going to improve. Which method are you going to choose? This is a model that we use within PMI, and these are the really important questions you need to ask. For example, where are we now? Where do we want to be? What are our focus areas? How can we maintain performance in daily operation? How can we improve performance? How will we work together? And how do we design, manage, and operate our improvement system to deliver the benefit? If I reveal these, you'll see that there's some detailed things behind it. So in the first one, it's about defining the business system. The next one, it's about developing the business aim, setting the business goals. The next one is plan and manage the improvement work. So what is the improvement program? Sponsoring the activities. Then managing and improving the business system. So this is managing the day-to-day, managing process standards, managing process training, resolving process abnormalities, monitoring process performance. How can we improve performance, generally speaking? This is about designing new processes or improving existing processes. How will we work together? How will we inspire and engage change? And at the top, the final ones on this one are design and manage the improvement system, so it has structure and responsibilities, and develop and improve capabilities thinking. Now, I'm just going to look at that as a model and say, right, okay, Hoshin Cannery, that's the little icon that's just appeared there, is a really very, very good tool for developing the business aim, setting the strategic goals, developing the business strategy. In fact, that's what its purpose is. If we look about plan and manage improvement work, well, we could have Six Sigma. We could have Lean. We could have, as a management process, the Agile or Scrum. But do be careful, Agile or Scrum was designed to satisfy software. It's been orientated so it can actually be used as a project management tool, but it needs to be processes or in areas where small incremental differences can be made as opposed to one step change. If we look at the managing and improve the business system on a day-to-day, we've got TPM. We've got Gemba Kaizen, again, that works for that. We've got Lean thinking, which will help us with our managing the day-to-day. We've got the process excellence model, if you want to use that, which is a combination of Lean, Six Sigma, and the other tools. You've got 8D for resolving problems, but also quality circles. Quality circles, 8D, in fairness, requires quality circles to work for it. Improving existing processes is probably going to be Gemba Kaizen as well, Kaizen activities, and Six Sigma. And designing new processes will be, using quality circles again for improving existing processes, and designing new processes is going to be designed for Six Sigma. Coming to the end on this one here, so organizing for improvement. We need to have a senior leadership team that are focused on improving the business as a system and are totally committed to it. Almost all of the methodologies demand that. And without that leadership support and understanding of the system they're trying to do, where they provide direction, where they provide design, and they encourage and provide the resources, no improvement methodology will work. Over on the left-hand side, we need the process managers, the process operators to be clear about the Gemba Kaizen approach, maintaining performance and continually improving it through standardize, maintain, improve. You may need to have people working in the organization that can help facilitate, and I guess many of you listening are that in that body of people, where you'll have improvement experts, trainers, facilitators, where you're going to provide support and guidance. So the summary of where we are at today is probably this. All of the methodologies I've talked about, and I'm sure those that I didn't get around to talking about as well, have some value. But they will only deliver value if you are absolutely clear about what it is you're trying to accomplish. What part of the system, what part of the process are you trying to fix? Many of the methodologies have very similar philosophies and similar tools. So don't get hung up on the particular methodology. A bit of experiential learning here. The best way of learning will be to understand the philosophy, to truly understand the philosophy and the techniques, and then practice, practice, practice. The distress I had 25, 30 years ago when I started out doing this was I couldn't get most of these things to work. I had to practice, practice, and practice. And actually, they do work when you understand truly the philosophy and the techniques. And the final statement here is that whatever happens, all improvement is based upon standardized work and plan, do, study, act. Plan, do, study, act. On that basis, Rich, I think
Hey, Des, squeaking in there, right on target. You can't ask for more. If you could just flick to your next slide, Des, please, that'd be great. Folks, thanks very much for joining us. As many of you will know, our Lean Six Sigma public training courses are fully virtualized and fully available. Recognizing that, we're still running the offer that book onto one of those programs, and we'll send you a brand new Apple iPad to equip you for the virtual learning experience as an extra device, and that's yours to keep at the end of the course. So do check out the website pmi.co.uk/training to see the details of that. Similarly, if you'd like to chat anything through on that nature, just give us a shout. Contact details all on the website as well. And then the very final slide is, could zip forward to that, Des, please.
Sorry, Rich,
That's all right.
There we go.
Don't keep us all waiting, Des. Come on, everyone's got a weekend to get on with.
That's okay.
So finally,
hopefully it's there.
It is indeed. So the January schedule, as I mentioned earlier on, is up. The reason I want to show this here is Kaizen, as you'll see, is one of the topics that you've requested. So we featured it very heavily through in the January schedule. So you find 2 webinars on that very subject. Available to book now. So on that note, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you with us. On behalf of Des, myself, and everyone at PMI, wishing you a very safe and happy weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for being with us again.